Hello, and welcome to another video. Today, we will be building a commander deck together. So this deck made a brief appearance in one of my previous videos, where I was going through some cards that I had set aside for certain decks. And there was a group of cards in there that I had started formulating an EDH deck for, around the theme of treasure tokens and haste. But I had been waiting to commit to the deck until we had Lost Caverns of Ixalan and Thunder Junction, because we didn't know what was going to be in those sets yet. So I wanted to wait before building a treasure-themed deck, because I suspected there might be some treasure things in there. So now that we are well into Thunder Junction, I am ready to revisit this deck and finish building it. So what we have here is a Moxfield page where I've plugged in just about every card I could think of that might possibly want to go in this deck. And as you can see here, there are 150 cards right now, and that is not counting any basic lands. So our job for today is to get this down to a completed 100 card deck. Right now there are 48 lands, 15 enchantments, 15 artifacts, 10 instants, 11 sorceries, 54 creatures, no battles, and 2 planeswalkers. So yeah, we need to cut this down to just 100 cards. I will start with the commander here. We've got Ognis the Dragon's Lash from New Capenna. That is when I first started putting the idea of this deck together, which is finally coming to fruition now. So he is 1 hybrid black-red, red, hybrid red-green, for a 3/3 legendary Viashino warrior, with haste, and whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. So ideally, I want a lot of other haste creatures so that we can create treasure. I want other things that create treasure on their own, as well as treasure payoffs. And I've also got some things in here that are just impactful things that just cost a lot, as another way to use up all of that extra treasure mana. So let's start going through. I don't know what the best way to go about this might be. Maybe we can start off with the lands. I feel like that might be a good way to kind of ramp up and get used to cutting a lot of cards, because there's a lot that need to come out. So as it stands, we've got 48 lands right now, and that doesn't count any basic lands. I think I want to aim for 33 lands to start. I'm not sure how low I can reasonably go, knowing that we'll be making a lot of treasure tokens. I don't want to have too few and not be able to have enough lands in early turns. So I think I'll start with 33 and then I can flex up or down depending on how my experience goes playing the deck. So to start out, we have Black Cleave Cliffs, and this whole cycle of lands that enter the battlefield tapped, unless you have 2 or fewer other lands. Yeah, I think those can stay for now. Blightstep Pathway, I think we can just get rid of that. Blood Crypt can stay. Yeah, let's get rid of these life gain lands. Okay, unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. Yeah, I don't really think we care about having the deserts in here. Cinder Barrens. Yeah, I think we can get rid of this. Blooming Marsh. Cinderglade. Command Tower stays. Okay, so a Surveil land with basic land types. I think we can leave that in for now. 2 or fewer other lands. 2 or more other lands. Dragonskull Summit can stay. Desert can go. Fumori Vault adds colorless, or 3 tap, discard a card. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of those cards into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So we should have a lot of artifacts, and this can help us filter our draw step. So I think this should be pretty good. Haunted Ridge. A desert can go. We'll get rid of Jungle Hollow. And I'm not paying attention to the number of each type of mana quite yet. I just want to prune down the overall number of lands that we have right now. And we can adjust later if we need more sources of different colors. So we can cut that. Okay, so we can exile 3 cards from our graveyard to create 2 treasure tokens. So I think we'll leave that in. Overgrown Tomb, Raucous Theater. We can leave the Surveil land. Reflecting Pool, Reliquary Tower. I think I can leave this in. 2 or more other lands. Yep. Yep. We'll get rid of this. Savage lands can stay. a cycling land with basic land types. I think we can keep that. +1/+1 in trample. Keep that. 2 or more opponents. Stomping ground. Yeah, I guess we'll get rid of a temple. I like the scry, but we do have the surveil lands which have basic land types. And I do need to cut a lot of lands still, so yeah, I guess these can go. Treasure Vault is XX tap to sacrifice and create X treasure tokens. So we could pay a bunch of land into that to produce a bunch of tokens. Or we could pay treasure into it and cut the number of treasures we own in half. I don't know why we'd want to do that, but we could. I don't know if maybe there's synergy for sacrificing artifacts, but that is something this could play into. Anyway, surveil, 2 or more opponents, Urborg. Yeah, I guess. Why not? I don't have a Yavimaya in here, but whatever. You know what? I'll get rid of the vivid lands. I'm not feeling that attached to them. Volatile Fault is 1 tap, sacrifice. Destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search their library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, and then you create a treasure token. So I'll keep that. Woodland Cemetery and Zayator's Proving Ground. Alright, so we've got 33 lands as it is, which is the total number of lands we want to run, with no basic land yet. So we're gonna have to make a few more cuts, I think. I want to run at least a few basic land. I don't know what the ideal number might be, and some of our lands do have basic land types, but things like our ramp spells need actual basic lands as targets. What do we want to get rid of? Two or fewer. Yeah, I think we can get rid of that. Two or fewer can go. 2 or more, I think I would like to keep. Surveil. 2 or fewer can go. 2 or more can stay. Buddyland, I think, can stay. 2 or more. Surveil. 2 or more. Maybe we could cut the Savage Lands. It doesn't have basic land types like the Proving Ground, so it doesn't really help out the Buddy Lands or anything that cares about land types. Or the Riveteer's Overlook, which has to search for a basic land type. Oh, this is actually straight up basic land. Maybe we should cut this. So, Savage Lands, I think I might still just get rid of. Skarg. I think trample is really important. I think I'm gonna cut it though, because we really just need to make room. 2 or more opponents. Surveil. 2 or more opponents. Do I really care about our Borg? Guess it's not really hurting anything. Alright. So we're at 27, which I guess means we have room for 2 of each basic land. Or we can fudge that number around depending on how many we need of each type. Like with our Urborg, maybe we don't need as many swamps. So yeah, let's call it good for now and we can move on. Let's take a look at our sorceries. Blood Money. Destroy all creatures. And for each non-token creature destroyed this way, you create a tapped treasure token. Seems pretty good. Brass's Bounty. For each land you control, create a treasure token. Also seems pretty good. Crater's Claws is X in a red to deal X damage to target creature or player. So this is basically one of those outlets to dump a bunch of treasures into and just deal a bunch of damage. Cultivate, Demonic Tutor, Explosive Vegetation, all very standard stuff here. Kodama's Reach, Lava Lanch, X damage to target player or planeswalker, and each creature that player controls. So again, another outlet for all of that treasure mana. Same thing with Profane Command. Regrowth, Sylvan Scrying. Think that all looks pretty good as is. Moving on to instants. Bedevil is just a piece of removal. For Comet Storm, we're paying in 2x and multi-kicker. Costly Plunder allows us to sack an artifact to draw 2 cards. Same thing here. Draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. Fanatical Offering, also the same thing. So with all of this redundancy, maybe if we end up needing to shave down, we could consider getting rid of one of these. I don't think having access to card draw is bad by any means, and I wouldn't want to have to get rid of any of these, but if we had to, I think that option exists. This one at least gives you your treasure back, so it's a better deal. And this one creates a map token, so I guess costly plunder is the least good deal if we had to cut one. Frozen Grip. Definitely want to keep that. Reckoner's Bargain. Another draw 2 for sacrificing an artifact. Sacrificing a treasure to this doesn't really gain any life, but we still draw 2 cards. Vamp Tutor. Volcanic Geyser. Just another really big X spell. So again, we've got some redundancy here, and maybe we could consider cutting one of these types of spells. I think Comet Storm and Volcanic Geyser at instant would be better than Crater's Claws because it's a sorcery. So out of these, maybe Crater's Claws is one we might think about getting rid of. Lavalanche is also a sorcery, but does quite a bit more. Yeah, if we want to cut a piece of redundancy, then probably Crater's Claws. And then Worldly Tutor, I think we keep. Moving on to artifacts, we've got Arcane Signet. Bootlegger's Stash allows us to pay land into it to create treasure. I definitely think this is very useful to have around. If you have any untapped lands and you're about to go into your turn, you can put them right on through here and get some treasures. Chromatic Lantern. Dark Steel Ingot. You know, we probably don't need Dark Steel Ingot in here. We're gonna have access to so many treasures. And this is basically a treasure that costs mana. I mean, we don't have to sacrifice it, but I think we're good to get rid of it. And is Chromatic Lantern actually adding anything to our life? It is useful, but the treasures are gonna sack for any color anyway. So I don't know that Chromatic Lantern is gonna be necessary. Maybe I'll just put it in here and we can come back to it if we want. Diamond Pickaxe is an indestructible equipment that gives +1/+1, and whenever this creature attacks, create a treasure token. We'll keep that. Dowsing Device is a 2-mana artifact that whenever it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, up to 1 target creature gets +1/+0 in haste. And then if we have 4 or more artifacts, which we definitely will, unless we've cashed in a bunch of treasure, we get a Geode Grotto, which taps to add red, or 2 red tap until end of turn target creature gets haste, and +X+O, where X is the number of artifacts you control, which should be a lot, so we definitely want that. Hammer of Perforos gives creatures haste, so that definitely stays in, and as a bonus, it can create 3/3 golems. Definitely want Lightning Greaves, Soul Ring, Swiftfoot Boots we keep, Treasure Map, 1 and tap to scry 1, put a landmark counter on Treasure Map. If there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, we transform Treasure Map and create 3 treasure tokens, which turns into a land that taps for colorless, or tap to sack a treasure and draw a card. We love that. Love turning treasures into card draw. Wayfarer's Bauble. I guess we can keep for now. Moving on to enchantments. Bitter Reunion is a 2-mana enchantment that when it ETBs you can discard a card to draw 2 cards, or what we want to do is pay 1 and sacrifice it, and creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Concordant Crossroads gives all creatures haste. Draconic Destiny gives enchanted creature +1/+1, flying haste and fire breathing. I think it's good, but I don't know that it'll be necessary. So I'm gonna move this over to considering. Fable of the Mirror Breaker creates a goblin that can produce a treasure, and then we get a copy of something that will have haste. So I think we want to try and keep this in. Fervor gives us haste. Fires of Yavimaya is haste. Flame Shadow Conjuring lets us pay red whenever a creature enters the battlefield, and we get a copy of it that has haste. Yeah, I think we'll keep that around. Garrick's Uprising. When this enters the battlefield, if we control a creature with a power 4 or greater, we can draw a card. Creatures you control have trample, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Yeah. I mean, I think it's applicable. I like that it draws cards and gives trample, but it doesn't really contribute to either theme of treasure or haste. So, I don't know. It is good utility, but I just don't know if it's really what we need. Gear per Aether Grid lets us tap 2 untapped artifacts to deal 1 damage to any target. Definitely seems like a good use of excess treasure. Mass Hysteria gives all creatures haste. So again, we do have a good amount of redundancy here. If we had to make a cut here, then we're probably looking at Mass Hysteria or Concordant Crossroads, because those give all creatures haste, and we do have other options that only give our creatures haste. Fires of Yavimaya, Fervor, Rhythm of the Wild also does. So yeah, we probably want to try and keep Fervor and Fires of Yavimaya over Concordant Crossroads or Mass Hysteria if we had to pick. Revel in Riches. So this is one of our win cons. It is 4 and a black for an enchantment that whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we create a treasure, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So that should be very easy for us to do, as long as we can get this out. So we've got our Vamp Tutor, our Demonic Tutor, and we haven't looked at this yet, but we do have a Runescarred Demon, which is also a tutor. So yeah, hopefully we can find this easy enough. Rhythm of the Wild is a 3-mana enchantment. Creature spells you control can't be countered, and non-token creatures you control have Riot, which means they enter the battlefield with either a +1/+1 counter or haste. So I think we want that. Rites of Flourishing is just nice for everyone at the table. Everyone draws 2 cards and plays 2 lands. I do like playing that. Alright. So we are still at 125 cards, and that's not counting the 6 basic lands that we have room for, but I am hopeful that we'll find quite a few cuts in the creatures. I just loaded this up with literally everything I could think of, so I think there's a bunch of cuts we can make. So, Academy Manufactor. It is a 3-mana 1/3 assembly worker. If you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead you create 1 of each. So this is really good. It helps us dump a bunch of artifacts onto the battlefield, and the clues would certainly be useful to draw more cards. I don't value food very highly, but getting it for free really doesn't bother me. Ancient Copper Dragon is a 6-mana 6/5 flying dragon with whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you roll a d20 and create a number of treasure tokens equal to the result. So this can potentially create a ton of treasures for us. A 6/5 body might not be the most impressive thing in EDH, but the evasion with flying is nice. He needs to be able to get through to create those treasure tokens, but we do have ways of giving trample and haste, and if we have some treasures already, we might be able to get him out ahead of curve, which could help us get through to deal combat damage to a player. So yeah, I think this guy is really cool. He can create a lot of treasures for us if we let him. And I'll be honest with you, I cracked one of these in a draft last weekend and I'm actually really excited to play it. So I'm gonna be keeping it in here. Anger. We want him in the graveyard so he can give everybody haste, and he needs a mountain to do that, so another reason why we really valued those lands with basic land types. Ardaz, Cobbler of War. is a 2-mana 1/1 Goblin Shaman with haste. Whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and it can create a 1/1 red goblin with haste. So I do think that ability that gives an extra 2 power to creatures is useful, and those 1/1 goblins would effectively be 3/1s until end of turn. So I do think it's useful, but I think I'll move it over to considering. Adeline Jackal is a 3-mana 2/2 with trample and haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So we do know that there are going to be limited basic land targets, but as a 2/2 I think that might be fine since it probably isn't getting through too much. Captain Lannery Storm is a 3-mana 2/2 with haste, and whenever she attacks, create a treasure token, which is also what Ognis does, so we are doubling up there. And whenever you sacrifice a treasure, she gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's flavorful, and I like it. So Chatterfang is basically the same idea as the Academy Manufactor, where we're getting extra tokens when we create treasures. He is a 3-mana 3/3 squirrel with Forest Walk, and if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel tokens are created instead. And we can sacrifice squirrels to give target creature +X/-X until end of turn. So we can pump up our own creatures or kill off our opponent's creatures. So I do think it's good, but I'm not totally sold on the idea of having him in here. It's basically just to get extra value from those tokens that we're already creating. Maybe we can move it over to considering. Crime Novelist is a 3-mana 1/3 with whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on it and add red. So we basically double up on the amount of mana that our treasures can make, and this guy gets bigger as we do that. He is a little expensive for a 1/3, but I think we can keep it. Deathleaper Terror Weapon is a 4-mana 3/3 with flash and haste, and creatures you control that entered the battlefield this turn have double strike. So that's really good when all of our creatures have haste, and they will be attacking. So I think we keep this around. Dockside Extortionist is a 2-mana 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Hopefully that's pretty good and more than pays for itself. In Commander, players should probably have things like soul rings or arcane signets, a variety of different enchantments, and maybe even some treasure tokens or clue tokens of their own, so I think we'll keep that. Eternal Witness is just good utility. Gala Greeters is a 2-mana 1/1 with whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you choose one of these modes that hasn't been chosen yet this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on Call Greeters, create a tapped treasure token, and you gain 2 life. So hopefully we're getting some extra treasures from our creatures entering the battlefield. Goldspan Dragon is a 5-mana 4/4 with flying and haste. Whenever he attacks or becomes the target of a spell, you create a treasure, and treasures you control have tap. Sack this artifact and add 2 mana of any one color. Goldvein Hydra is X and a green for a 0/0 Hydra with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and when it dies, you create a number of tapped treasures equal to its power. So even if we pay a bunch of treasures into it and it dies, we still get those treasures back, as long as it doesn't get exiled or something like that. Goro Goro is a 2-mana 2/2 with red. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn, and then 3 red to create a 5/5 dragon, but only if you control an attacking modified creature. So this is pretty much here just to give our creatures haste, and I don't know if that is truly necessary, so I think I'll take that out. Grand Warlord Rada is a 4-mana 3/4 with haste, and whenever one or more creatures you control attack, add that much mana in any combination of red and or green, and until end of turn you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. I think I'll leave it in for now. Grim Hireling is a 4-mana 3/2. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens. Black, sacrifice X treasures. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. Definitely seems like a good outlet for our treasures. So yeah. Hellkite Tyrant is a 6-mana 6/5 dragon with flying and trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. So this is our win con in terms of hoarding artifacts. Just like Revel in Riches. So we definitely want to keep this in. Ingenious Artillerist is a 3-mana 3/1 with whenever one or more artifacts enter the battlefield under your control, Ingenious Artillerist deals that much damage to each opponent. So we really like that. Jaxus is a 4-mana 2/3 with red tap, discard a card. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card, and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And Blitz for 1 and a red. So, yeah, I do like this. I like that it draws cards, and the token copies seem pretty useful. I might move it into considering, though. I don't know, maybe I'll keep it for now. Kalain, Reclusive Painter, is a 2-mana 1/2 that creates a treasure token when it enters the battlefield, and other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. So this is definitely an incentive to use our treasures on creatures, especially on things like Goldvein Hydra, which can get absolutely massive. So we definitely want to keep this in here. Kellogg, Dangerous Mind, is a 3-mana 3/2 with first strike and haste. Whenever he attacks, create a treasure token, and we can sacrifice 5 treasures to gain control of target creature for as long as you control Kellogg. I do like that. Corvald, Feycursed King, is a 5-mana 4/4 with flying. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, sacrifice another permanent, and whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on Corvald and draw a card. So we can absolutely sacrifice treasures to him, and even just spending treasures makes him bigger and draws us cards, so this is exactly what we want to be doing, I think. Magda, Brazen Outlaw, is a 2-mana 2/1 with other dwarves you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token and sacrifice 5 treasures. Search your library for an artifact or dragon card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So I don't think we're gonna have much for other dwarves in here. Yeah, so we have 2 dwarves, and they're both Magda, so yeah, I think we're just searching for artifacts or dragons. The Hellkite Tyrant is one of our win cons, so not too bad. Let's see how many dragons we have, though. Okay, so we have 7. Yeah, I think I'd be okay keeping her in. Magda the Horde Master is a 2-mana 2/2 with whenever you commit a crime, create a tapped treasure token, but only once each turn, and then you can sacrifice 3 treasures to create a 4/4 red scorpion dragon with flying and haste. So that seems pretty doable, and a good outlet for turning our treasures into creatures. Marut is an 8-mana 7/7 trample that when he enters the battlefield, if treasure was spent to cast it, you create a treasure token for each mana from a treasure spent to cast it. So he's just kind of a big creature with trample, which I like. And then the treasures that you spend on him are pretty much free, or you basically get a rebate on them. So not bad, but I feel like I really need to make some cuts here. We're still at 121, plus 6 for the basic lands. So yeah, we really need to make some room here. Mayhem Devil is a 3-mana 3/3. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. So that's pretty good. Mirkwood Bats is a 4-mana 2/3 flyer. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. So that's along the same lines as Mayhem Devil, and definitely something we want to keep. Nadir's Nightblade is a 3-mana 1/3 elf warrior, with whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It's a little funny how all of these are kind of lining up here, but I think we're gonna keep this one as well. Ogre Battle Driver is a 4-mana 3/3 ogre warrior, with whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. So I like that it gives haste and that it increases power temporarily, but I'm a little underwhelmed by it otherwise, so let's cut it out. Old Gnawbone is a 7-mana 7/7 dragon with flying. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. So we definitely want to keep that in. Olivia Crimson Bride is a 6-mana 3/4 vampire noble with flying and haste. Whenever she attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking. It gains whenever you don't control a legendary vampire. Exile this creature. I do like it, but I think I'm going to move it over to considering for now. Phoenix Chick is a 1-mana 1/1 with flying and haste. He can't block, and whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay red. If you do, return Phoenix Chick from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped and attacking, with a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeah, I don't think I need Phoenix Chick in here. It's just a 1/1, so I don't feel too bad about getting rid of that. Pitiless Plunderer is a 4-mana 1/4 human pirate. Whenever another creature you control dies, create a treasure token. This is definitely along the lines of what we want to be doing. I'm a little hesitant about this one though, because I'm not really sure if it's quite impactful enough for 4 mana. So although it is very much in our theme, I'm hesitating to want to keep it in. I think I'm actually going to take it out and then we can revisit it if we need to. Professional Facebreaker is a 3-mana 2/3 with menace. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, and sacrifice a treasure. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So this one I really feel does much more for us. It both helps us create treasures, and it gives us a creative way to turn our treasures into card advantage. And other treasures that we've produced with this could help cast whenever we flip off the top. Yeah, I would like to keep this in. Ravenous Chupacabra. He is useful, but I don't think I want him in here right now. Reckless Fireweaver is a 2-mana 1/3. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. I will keep that. I'll keep Runescarred Demon as our tutor. We'll keep Sakura Tribe Elder. Samut is a 3-mana 2/3 with first strike, vigilance, and haste. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, if that creature entered the battlefield this turn, draw a card. Not bad. I think I'm gonna move this over to considering though. Shivan Devastator. X and a red for a 0/0 Hydra with flying and haste. The Slickshot show-off I just put in here because I like it right now, but I don't know that it really belongs. It just has haste, so I think I'll take that out. The Balrog is a 7-mana 7/5 that costs 1 less for each permanent sacrificed this turn, so we could cast this for 2. If, for instance, we cast our Shivan Devastator for 5 treasures, then we'd just have to pay black-red for this. It has haste and can't be blocked except by legendary creatures. And when he dies, destroy target artifact or creature an opponent controls. So I do want to keep him. Tireless Provisioner is a 3-mana 3/2 with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token or a treasure token. I think I'll keep that. Ulvenwald Oddity is a 4-mana 4/4 with trample and haste that can transform into an 8/8, trample haste, and other creatures you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. It does seem useful, but I don't know that I feel super strongly about this one. Urabrask the Hidden is a 5-mana 4/4. Creatures you control have haste, and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. So yeah, we do want to put ourselves ahead and put our opponents behind. Woodfall Primus is just really big and will cost a lot of treasure. He has trample, and whenever he enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent with persist. So yeah, he's just really good and I'd like to keep him in. World Spine Worm is again another place to sink a lot of treasure into. It's an 11-mana 15/15 worm with trample, and when it dies it splits into 3 5/5 worms and then gets shuffled back into its owner's library. So I really like that one. Wolfgar of Icewind Dale is a 5-mana 4/4 with melee. If a creature you control attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So that is a good way to double up on our Ognis trigger and any others we have that are similar. Xenagos, God of Revels, is a 5-mana 6/5 god with indestructible and needs 7 devotion to be a creature. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. Yeah, I don't really think we need him. Zorn is a 3-mana 3/2 elemental. If you would create one or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. So we get one additional treasure overall for each individual instance of creating treasures. Seems pretty good. Surta Ancient is just mana flare on a creature. I do like him, but I don't really think we're going to need it with all of the treasure that we'll be creating. Seems like we're probably just helping out our opponents with this, so I think we can get rid of it. Zayatora the Incinerator is a 6-mana 6/6 demon dragon with flying. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature, and when you do, this deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasures. I think I'm gonna say maybe to this one. I don't love sacrificing my own creatures. Alright, so we are down to 110, plus the 6 basic lands, so we still have 16 more cuts to make. I think I'll just add those in now so I don't have to keep remembering that. And I'll just do 2 of each for now. I'm sure that is not going to be the correct balance, but I just want to get something in there. And we'll add 1, add 1, and add 1. There's probably a way better way to do this, but I don't know how to use Moxfield. So yeah, we need to cut 16 cards. I think this total is counting Ognis. I'm pretty sure he's our only Viashino, so yeah, looks like he's in there. So how should we go about making the rest of the cuts? I don't think I'm going to touch the land anymore right now. Even if it's not perfect, we do have 33 lands, which is the number that I want, so I think I'll just leave those alone and focus on the rest of the deck. You know, I'm not super attached to Wayfarer's Bauble, so I think I can cut that. Do we actually need Fable of the Mirror Breaker? Yeah, I think so. And Concordant Crossroads. Maybe we can take away the Rites of Flourishing. Feels a little mean, but with all of the treasure, I don't know that we'll actually need access to extra lands. But with all of that mana, I do think it would be good to draw extra cards. We could put a Phyrexian arena in here instead. I'll have to think about that. It is a little awkward that if we tap treasures for this, then we can't spend them until they become untapped again. But it is a good way to put those treasures to use if they're just sitting there. Maybe we can shave down Flame Shadow Conjuring. I think I'll move that to considering. Yeah. Maybe I'll actually just take this out. We do want to be able to draw extra cards, but we have these spells to help us do that. I think maybe we can get away with it. Oh yeah, we didn't go through the Planeswalkers. So Duretti lets you put a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token with Defender onto the battlefield. Or you may sacrifice an artifact, and if you do, destroy target artifact or creature, and then choose target artifact card in a graveyard or on the battlefield, and put 3 tokens that are copies of it onto the battlefield. So that definitely seems very good for us. And then Sarkin. All that he really has going for him here is that he can become a 4/4 dragon with haste. So I don't really think he needs to be in here at all. And Duretti's second ability there is a really good use of those foods and things that come from the Academy manufacturer. And let's see what we have for targets for that artifact copying ability. Obviously, there's treasure. We could use some copies of our equipments. I think I'm good on enchantments for now. I don't love playing board wipes. I do understand that they can be necessary to help keep things under control, so I will keep this in here. I like the idea of creating treasure for each land I control, but this does cost a lot to cast. I'm just gonna cut it. Yeah, like I mentioned before, maybe we do shave down on one of these damage spells. So maybe we get rid of the sorcery that is a little less impactful than the others. We may want to increase our basic land just to make sure we have enough to get with these ramp spells. But we'll think about that later. Bedevil is kind of our only creature removal spell. We could consider Doomblade or Murder or something like that. Although we do have other things that allow us to get rid of creatures. So this does increase the power by quite a bit, but we may find ourselves needing trample. Alright. Just 10 more cuts to go. Yeah, I don't really think we need this. I like Crime Novelist, but I'm gonna move him over to Considering. Alright. I'm gonna be real with you. This card costs $80, and I do not have one in my collection right now. I don't have it, so I would have to buy it. And I don't really know that it's worth it to me to have this in here. Would it be out of control to just not play it here? I feel like we have plenty of ways to create treasures. So, yeah, I think I'm just gonna get rid of it. Oh wow. That changed everything. Alright. Do we really need Gala Greeters? I like that it makes treasures, and I also like that it can grow itself. I'm gonna move that over to Considering though. Alright. Just 6 more cuts. Man, this is so hard for me. Having to cut cards from decks is really not my strength at all. I can pretty much make a case for why any card needs to be in here. Cause like, I can imagine the best case scenario, and it's hard for me to step back and really see the big picture and be like, you know, we're good on this front, we don't need that card. This isn't contributing anything, or it's not powerful enough. So, yeah, I really struggle with cutting down on deck lists, especially in Commander. Let me know if you have the same problem and we can commiserate. Yeah, where are these cuts gonna come from? Do you think we can get rid of Arcane Signet? Just in the context of this deck? Is it really adding anything? Guess I'll move it over to Considering. I've never really played a deck like this where treasure is a major theme, so I'm not really sure how to evaluate some of these mana rocks that you would normally have in a commander deck. And maybe we can get rid of Soul Ring as well for that reason. It is still fast mana, but maybe it's a bit less impactful when we have access to so many treasures. Oh yeah, maybe we can take a look at Jax's. I would feel bad getting rid of them. I really like that Jax's is from New Capenna, just like Ognis. Maybe they even know each other. So I think Jax's is kind of a flavorful add here, but maybe not totally necessary, unfortunately. Definitely keeping the Balrog. He can only be blocked by legendary creatures, and we really care about our creatures being able to get through and deal combat damage to our opponents. Maybe World Spineworm is too much. We do have a couple Hydras that we can pay into X with and make them as big as we want. And hopefully they can't be countered because of Rhythm of the Wild. But World Spineworm is a better deal in terms of mana to power, and it makes those 5/5s. Yeah. World Spineworm is gonna stay in. We want Urabrask. Should we maybe consider one of the enchantments that give haste? Like, we might have enough redundancy to be able to eliminate one of those. I'm a little hesitant because Ognis needs creatures to have haste in order to do his thing. So I guess I'm not sure how much redundancy is going to be needed. A lot of our creatures do have haste on their own. We have Urabrask, Concordant Crossroads, Anger, as long as he's in the graveyard, Fervor, Fires of Yavimaya, Mass Hysteria, Rhythm of the Wilds in a way. If we are going to get rid of one, then it should probably be one of the ones that our opponents can benefit from. It's so tough to want to get rid of when it only costs 1 mana though. Yeah, let's just do it. Alright. We've got 2 more cuts and then we can all go home. Yeah, I think we want all of these. So we do want to be mindful of the number of artifacts and dragons we have left for Magda. I think we're still in good shape though. I think our artifacts are looking good. We still have 6 dragons remaining. This one can pump out as many dragons as we want. So that seems really good. The Mayhem Devil is good synergy with that. So this helps us double up on treasure. And this will almost double up on treasure most of the time. He looks so weird though. Is there another art we can use? I love art from Justine Jones, but this guy is a bit much for me. Okay, yeah. Let's make him go back into the shadows a little bit. He's still weird, but a little easier to digest here. Okay, just 2 more cuts. We could just cut 2 lands. Just kidding. Like I said, we're still pretty low on creature removal. Although we can shrink creatures, and we can do a bunch of damage to creatures, so hopefully we're okay there. Yeah, Duretti destroys creatures as well, so definitely need to keep that in. Maybe we don't really care about Radha that much. Just 1 more. I could maybe get rid of the worst of the card draw spells here. I don't fully love the idea, but I don't really know where else to go. So, yeah, let's just snap it off. Alright. And there we have it. Thank you so much for joining me today while we finished out a commander deck together. I'm curious to know what you thought of this format of video, and if it's something that you would like to see again in the future. Let me know down in the comments. Have you built an Ognis deck? Or have you built a treasure deck under a different commander? Let me know, and I would love to talk about it. And if you enjoyed this video, I would so appreciate if you would hit that thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll be back with new Magic the Gathering ASMR videos every Monday and Friday. Your support means the absolute world to me, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.